Welcome back to another Real Life Finance podcast. I am here with the wonderful Moussa Ibrahim. And Musa, we're going to get to know you a little bit better, but you and I met about 4 years ago, if I remember right. Right? So
4 years ago.
Came from University of Southern Indiana. Let's get to know Musa. So Musa, why don't you share a little bit about your background and where you went to school and when you got here, and just tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's get to know you.
Thank you, man. First off, I'd like to congratulate you on this podcast.
Thanks.
I think that, man, 4 years. I think 4 years ago, I remember tracing back that you had mentioned that you wanted to start this podcast.
Yeah.
And now you got a whole guest list lined up, just really incredible people. I would say a good thing to know about me is first generation American.
Mm-hmm.
So I have that immigrant mentality. Immigrant parents from Western Africa. They moved down to North Carolina, have me and my siblings, and then we move over to Indianapolis for factory jobs. And at the age of 9, my mom had decided to move us back to Africa, of all places. So I moved back in there. I'm about 9 years old, and I lived there. I thought it was going to be a summer. It turned out to be 6 years. And we lived in Niger, and Niger is one of the poorest countries on the face of the earth. And I really firsthand just got to see what poverty looks like, right? Like, just got to see what it looks like, what, the African economy looks like. And I think that kind of shaped, those are some memorable moments in my life. And it made me quite grateful and ambitious when I moved back from Niger to North Carolina to finish high school and start my own adult life. I think I was filled with quite a bit of aspiration and ambition. I was like, I got to see the opposite,
Yeah, it is. You're right. I mean, until you experience that environment of poverty-stricken, just times, it's hard to understand what it's like to go through that, right? So I think, we're on a finance podcast. So we're going to dive into that. So when you graduated high school in North Carolina, what made you move back to Evansville, Indiana?
Gosh, so I moved back. I actually moved back I moved back to Indianapolis.
Okay.
To live with my dad and my sister. And I was one of those high school kids. I didn't really care where I went to college. Really low maintenance guy. And my sister wanted to get into Michigan, and she had a list of other universities she'd like to apply to. If she didn't get into Michigan, she didn't, and she had a couple universities lined up. IU was one of them, but for some reason she chose USI, and I said, hey, look, I'm just going to apply to wherever you apply to. We're the same age, and whichever one you get into. Assuming that I got in as well, I'll just follow you there.
Very cool.
So we went to USI, and about a year in, she left USI to go to IU, so I got stuck at USI here in Evansville.
It's a good school, man. That's where I went to.
It's a good school. Those Griegels.
Absolutely. So what struck me neat and interesting about you is when we first met 4 years ago, you did a lot of this finance. So for those that don't know, Musa, you are our financial empowerment officer in Indianapolis. So overseeing the entire market and around that area on all things education. So what I was going to ask you is kind of what experiences from your early life helped shape your approach to financial education. And I think some of that began on campus at USI, right?
Yeah. Well, I obviously talked about my experience in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And, just kind of living, growing up in a blue collar family. We were an apartment family, so never had that suburban experience, that middle class experience. So when I remember when I first stepped foot on campus, it was really my first time making friends with middle class people. It was really unique, right? Just like hearing their lives and seeing how their parents lived and the flexibility that they had. I remember for my parents to leave work or make a weekend trip, that was like a really big deal, right? Like you had to talk with your boss and get that, escalate. And I made friends at college with a bunch of folks that didn't really, have that experience on things. And to kind of move that on forward, I stepped foot on campus. I got to experience what life was like for a lot of my rural peers and big city peers here in Evansville. And that shaped, that kind of built a desire to build a life like that, if not higher. And I was a finance student. I think I changed my major like 3 times.
Yeah.
Or maybe 4.
Which is pretty normal, right?
Pretty normal.
Yeah.
But I got into the finance field because I wanted to be like a financial advisor, just kind of graduate, work here in Evansville, tag on fees for folks at a financial firm and, get a house in the suburb here and get a golf cart and just kind of
Absolutely.
drive off into the sunset.
Literally, right? Yeah.
I really got interested into finance when I needed money to pay for my second semester of my sophomore year, and I found out about a grant that you were eligible for if you sat down with a financial success mentor. It was just 3 meetings, no strings attached. You just had to receive financial education via 3 meetings, and you would be eligible for a $1,500 grant towards your semester balance. And I was like, that is a no-brainer. And I remember walking in to the office, and the first thing that they asked me was, my bank statements. I said, go print off your bank statements, and we'll just kind of walk through each and every single line item, and that was frightening. Anyhow, that journey turned into me having a financial advisor for free at the University of Southern Indiana for like a year. And I just love that relationship I had with that finance office. They ended up hiring me as an intern. And I was one of those kids that was really, really good with people. People were drawn to me. My admin skills were a little weak, so everyone else in the office kind of cleaned up after me. So I did the internship, and then they just kind of kept me on staff. They said, hey, just work full time. So I worked full time there. And I remember just sitting down one day in the office. I was like, man, I really love this. I just really love building relationships with people and helping them achieve their goals. And that's kind of what brought me here.
Yeah, so it's relationship. I'm glad you brought that up because I think relationships are so important regardless, right? I mean, I've known you since when you then interned with us, right? And you did a lot of one-on-one financial coaching at the university, which I think is just cool because when I was in school, there wasn't a lot of that, right? I mean, it was like we had to just figure this out. I got in credit card debt in college, right? Spring break, Panama City, signed up for my first credit card, got in debt. I learned the hard way like most people do.
Yep.
But for you being able to work one-on-one with students is a pretty cool thing.
It was amazing.
Did you feel like rewarding, I guess, in helping people?
Yes, I did. I mean, no matter how tired I was, every day I opened up that laptop and had a Zoom call ready. I just felt, they thought they were being empowered. I felt empowered, right? And the clients were so diverse. Yeah. We had 50-year-olds that were looking to finish their grad school degree, and they found out about this program. Because remember, if they met with me 3 times, they were eligible for up to a $1,500 grant. So we had all kinds of clients.
Yeah.
Gosh, I remember helping an individual go through a divorce. I remember helping a chief of police for a town I won't mention, obviously. A chief of police, and and he was my client for like a year.
Yeah.
And he was listening to some 19-year-old, coach him about his
It's a little scary at times, right?
Yeah.
You're like, am I doing this right?
It's like, whoa, but he seems to keep showing up, so let's keep it going.
Yeah.
But it was an incredible experience. Now today, being a financial empowerment officer, we speak to large crowds, right? So I really crave that one-on-one setting. But I tell you, hey, there's a lot of love in the large crowds too. But
100%. So let me ask you, so starting so young, right? As a 19, when I was 19, I started working at the bank at 19 years old too. I wanted to be a teacher. And then I'm like, bank sounds fun. I can make some money, and live my college life. And then, fast forward 25 years now, I'm teaching at a bank. So you never know things work out. But I know when you start young, you face some hurdles probably of understanding, building the trust with somebody, like you said, in their 50s.
Yep.
And having that confidence. So how did you kind of, overcome some of those challenges at such a young age doing what you did?
I think, well, first off, I want to touch on this part. I think one thing that you and I might have in common too. I also want to be a teacher someday.
No,
I guess
I
we
didn't
are.
know that. Yeah,
I mean, we are teachers, but
yeah.
I think when I'm 50 or something, I'm just going to leave my career and just work at a high school.
Professor Musa.
Well, maybe teacher,
Teacher Musa,
high school teacher Musa.
Absolutely.
Or high school teacher Mufasa or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
I would say that, starting off so young, at least for my journey, I just tripped a lot.
Yeah.
I made lots of mistakes, and I'm a hands-on learner, so that's kind of a curse / blessing. I would say the thing that really helped me out a lot was being coachable. And I think here in Evansville, in the Evansville business community here, the seniors are really gracious at offering coaching, right? So if you're a young professional, just be coachable.
Yeah.
And I could tell you to be brave or to be courageous or confident, but I would say have audacity.
Yeah.
And what I mean by audacity is that actually think that you can do that.
Yeah. And I think too, being open to listening to others, right?
Yes.
And for those listening and following along, we work with, Musa and I work with people of all ages, all backgrounds, all financial differences and positive negatives, but when people are open to listening to change, right? I mean,
Yeah.
with finances, we got to make changes a lot of times,
A lot of
right?
times.
And
All the
be
time.
open to that. And sometimes we learn by our mistakes, but we're going to go more into what we do for our work in just a little bit. But I think that piece of just being a little bit vulnerable is okay.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? And once you do, I mean, the sky's the limit,
When
right?
you open up, they'll open up.
Yes, absolutely. And it's all about building trust. So wonderful. So it's good to know your background, kind of how you got started
Yeah.
into the banking, moving from the university to Old National. Now I want to talk about what we do in the community. So Musa, as we get into the world of community, right? You moved from Evansville where we met,
Yes.
and you took a chance going to Indianapolis. First of all, I just want to ask, for me with 4 kids, the concept of moving to a different city is fearful for me. But as a young individual like yourself, what was that like, taking a journey and a chance of moving 3 hours away?
Well, I think to most viewers, 3 hours is nothing, but I just kind of, having such a great community here in what I would like to consider a small town. Evansville's
Yeah.
not a small town, but what I would like to consider just a small town. It was really homey. I felt so harnessed here. Everything was here for me. So, at that moment, it wasn't just a college town anymore. And thinking of the idea of moving away into a city where, really, given the tenure I had in Evansville, I didn't really have much relationships there. I didn't have family there. It was quite daunting. I think I remember sort of pacing back and forth to your office and other colleagues' office, and I was just thinking stuff through. And here's the thing, and this might be a little too vulnerable to share or too raw, but when I first had that opportunity, I actually said no.
Did you?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Right off the bat. It wasn't about the opportunity, anything about the opportunity. I was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to do that. It was literally, I think it was about a 3-minute conversation. Like, hey, how do you feel about doing this? I was like, no, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
I was like, can I do it from home?
Yeah, a little
Said
scary
no.
moving, picking up your roots and going to a big city, right?
Yeah, and they said, we'll give you the weekend.
So let me ask you. Yeah, so you had the weekend to think about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I said yes.
Yeah. So ultimately, you made your decision. You're a dedicated financial empowerment officer. So for our listeners, Musa's job is really driving everything personal finance related, from pre-K through senior citizens, everywhere in between. So I would imagine, Musa, a big part of you getting integrated into a new city to teach education is about community involvement, right?
Yes.
I'm assuming a lot of volunteerism.
A lot of volunteerism.
So let's talk about that. So let's share your little information, in a quick story about how you got involved in working with the community.
Okay. So one thing I do want to mention is that, coming from the line of work where you meet with people individually, right, and say, hey, I'm Musa and you're Jess, and I care about your goals and I want to help meet your goals, and we're going to meet one-on-one, and we have this curriculum. It's a lot different than going into a whole community, usually like a low-income zip code, and say, hey, I'm here on behalf of this major institution, a bank, and I'm here to provide financial education. That's a much harder job to do. I think that trust factor is so different.
Yes.
So I think that how I got involved in the community, obviously, if anyone in the sales world, we're not salespeople, but anyone in the sales world know that you just show up, you make yourself visible with the community work. What really got me integrated in the community in Indianapolis was just volunteerism. I'd just show up.
That's how I got into it too. I went to a state where I knew nobody, and
oh yeah.
And, volunteering at the beginning to me was kind of like, I'll do it to meet people for client purposes, but then it becomes a passion, right? And I think your passion of volunteerism, I see what you do all the time, and it's phenomenal stuff. And I will ask you, so working with the community, delivering all these classes, from small to big, right? We work with all sizes, and we'll get into that work here. But I want to say, how is the world of teaching financial education impacted you individually on your own personal finances?
Well, I think you have this weight on you, right? You have to practice what you preach.
Yeah.
And I think interestingly enough, I have a lot more sympathy with myself as I see folks in all kinds of situations, and when I see people struggling with bankruptcy, people struggling with major debt or divorce, a lot of the times I see myself in that person. They're no different than I am.
Yeah.
So I think it's really grown me to care for myself. Just be a sympathetic, say, hey, you're a human. personal finance is 80% behavior, 20% head knowledge, and why is your behavior like this, and what can we do? I think it's a lot more life management actually than personal finance. The head knowledge, you can find it anywhere. It's really accessible. Quite frankly, you don't even need a teacher. You can just go on the internet. But I think who can help you break those behavioral patterns? So I think taking that behavioral approach and accountability. You know, I would have a friend. We don't do it anymore, but him and his wife, they have their own personal budget. And I have my own personal budget. And this was actually a former client at the University of Southern Indiana. We'd get together every 2 weeks, and we'd lay out our financial snapshot for that week prior, for that month prior. Say, all right, this is what I spent. This is my income and everything, and I'm going to show it to you, and you show me yours. And then we're going to say, okay, this is what we're going to project our expenses to look like next month. It was quite daunting.
It is. You know, and I think more families need to do that, to be honest. You mentioned divorce. I work with a lot of families that are going through divorce. Do you know what the number one cause of divorce is these days?
I don't know. Could it be money?
Marriage. No, I'm just kidding. The money's right at the top, right? And I always joke around, you know, when I teach and mentioning that. But, you know, my wife and I have been married for over 17 years. We go through a budget. I've been in this role for, 12 years, been with the bank 25. We still have disagreements with money, right? But we have to eventually come up with that compromise. And the more people that I meet with, and for our followers, if you have a spouse or a partner, talking with finances is so important. I mean, it's scary sometimes because you don't want to have an argument, right? But at the same time, it's like if delaying the inevitable, right? So I know you and I do a lot in that space, and it's just one of those things that I just want to make sure our listeners mention. It's having that open discussion about finances is so key.
And I think in how you have that is you have to build a bridge of vulnerability. You know, you share, I share, you share, I share. I'm no marriage counselor, but I think one thing, and I'm also not married, but I think one thing I'm picking up is that it's the same thing with building a relationship with a large crowd or a singular person. You build a bridge of vulnerability, and they kind of meet you halfway. And it's like, all right, we're both being vulnerable. You know, and we're going to hold hands. And we're both in this together, and we can't discriminate against. You know, we're both in this, and I think that's what leads to a really, really
I agree.
successful.
I remember when we were engaged, we went through like 2 classes on finances, and I'm thinking, why do we need to do it? I get it now, right? I mean, because it's something that more people need to do. So, okay, so obviously, we practice what we preach. We got to do these things, right? We teach what we do ourselves, and I think that helps when we're out teaching communities and whatnot. But can you share a memorable experience or a story from your work in Indianapolis or in Evansville or wherever that really made a significant impact on you personally?
Oh man, I'm glad and proud to say that I have so many. Just last week, I was speaking at a Warren Township school in Southeast Indianapolis, and I developed this partnership with a Colts player where he has 9 schools and about 800 students. And throughout the course of like 2 weeks, I would go in, teach a course, on behalf of his organization, his nonprofit organization. And, this is me talking like 4th graders.
Yeah.
And I'd make it really fun and engaging and loud and rumble, and just kind of teach them about these basic concepts. And that was about 2 weeks ago. And last week, I was at a trunk or treat, and I had a parent ushering me over to their trunk. I was like, hey, come on over here. Come on over. My son wants to talk to you. I was like, what does a 4th grader have to, I love 4th grade. I wonder, does he know me somewhere? And he was like, this kid says you were in his school. And right after the class, when he got back home, he kept on bothering us about his allowance. He's like, Mom and Dad, I want my allowance so I can put it into a budget. They're like, what are you talking about? What do you know what a budget is? And he defined the word budget to them. And I think that was...
Isn't that awesome?
It was amazing. It was awesome.
So I've got a 4th grader. You've met Jace. And
what a guy.
Yeah, he's a character too. But he loves money. So he came home. He's like, Dad, I'm really glad you got me an Old National Kid Start Savings, right? He's like, I want some compound interest. And I'm like, what? Right? So, but the reason I say that is kids are sponges, right? And when you share this information, so as parents or if you've got kids in your life, share finances with them. It's great. All right, so let's move on here. As we talk about relationships, you build a lot of relationships with clients, with community, with nonprofits. What strategies, Musa, do you use to build and maintain relationships with these folks?
I think every time people ask me this, I say, just take an organic approach. Just people. Listen. You will not believe how many people just want to be listened to. Right? I've got folks, just listen. Listen and be altruistic. Just be more of a giver. Just give, and don't expect to receive anything. And show your authenticity. Tell them what you're about.
I like that you said listening, like active listening,
Just
right?
listen.
It's one of those things that so many people that I've seen, they're thinking of their next thing that they want to say, and they would have just listened. Everything's coming out, and relationships is the key, right? So I'm with you. It's one of those things that people love to talk. Listen to them, right? And the more you can become personally, relatable and build that rapport with them,
you learn more when you listen.
You do, 100%. So we deliver education throughout the communities. Let me ask you, how does Musa define success from delivering financial education programs throughout the Indianapolis market and surrounding area?
That is, believe it or not, it's not a hard question for me to answer, but it's a question that I get asked so much in the banking world, and they think it's a hard question, right? Because they want to see metrics.
Yeah.
Because, all right, Musa, you spoke to this crowd of 300 people 3 months ago. What's the ROI? Like, where are their grades? I'm like, I don't grade them. I don't grade them. And I think that the measure of success, first off, on a personal approach, when I'm in the crowd and I see folks listening attentively and they feel as though it's a person that's speaking to them, a couple of times you'll see folks get an aha moment. Obviously, when you get done with the seminar, the line waiting for you is a big sign of success. But also, most importantly, I think when you just classical being called back, like just being called back into that room again, right? Just being called back.
When you get that second approach with them, right? And we've done a lot of one and done presentations, and they're fine, right? But I think the more that you can be in front of someone and build it, because to me, it's about building trust, right? Once you build the trust, then the listening really starts to happen from the other person's perspective, right?
You know what I would say, Ben, actually? When they ask more questions. When they ask more questions, because that has the assumption that they've actually, you've answered their prior questions.
Yeah.
If you told them what a budget is, like, all right, let's talk about debt. What's debt?
Yeah.
I think that's the measure of
100%.
success right there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Good. Well, it's good to know, I think, sharing some of the relationship building, getting engaged and whatnot. So I want to take a moment to talk about what we do, right? I mean, you see the sign, real life finance. Some people ask, well, what does it mean? Real life finance is our umbrella of education. So we do a lot of in-person workshops. So for those that don't know, you can go right to our website. Under the About Us section, under Community, there's a whole financial education portion there. Yeah, you can literally book a workshop there. So we have over 200 people throughout our entire company, right, Musa, that deliver education from a volunteer side. I mean, you and I do this full time. So for those that don't know and you want us to come speak at your school, your university, if you're a business owner, come speak to your client. I love working with clients. I mean, it's, adding that
value.
Yeah, it's a value add, and it's another piece of the relationship that we can bring to them. So we can do that. So as we do these things, we have e-learning, which we'll talk about. But I want you to share how our real life finance curriculum, which is our branded curriculum, has been accepted from the indie market, specifically where you work.
Well, it's a top tier curriculum, and I'll tell you this: that most organizations they don't have access to it.
Yeah.
So I think they're really appreciative of that. But the fact that you have, what I say to clients and communities is that we're an outsourced financial educator. And that blows their minds. Whoa, so you're not just going to just give us the curriculum? When we call, you're going to be there? It's yeah, we're going to be there in person. And we have a set of different instructors just in case you get tired of me.
Yeah.
Or if you want to kind of blend in with your demographic differently. And we are, I like to say, a la carte.
Yeah.
Whatever works with your audience, we can tailor our curriculum to that.
Absolutely.
So it blows their mind. And I got to say, I'll just proudly say that I like to think of us as a top in the city.
And you built a team in Indy, right? How many instructors do you have?
We've got 9 full and ready instructors just strutting about town and delivering
workshops. So as the demand comes up, from online, when we got people to service it, right?
We got some in Bloomington. We got some going on I think this morning someone leading one. And it's just, you look at our calendars, it's just, we're all active.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So, with that, it's one of those things that we can offer this in all of our communities, our multi-state footprint. So if you're listening and you want some education in your area, you can request that and we'll get them taken care of. So one thing that I've noticed, Musa, is tailoring to the audience, right? So we deliver to all ages. So we've got pre-K through 2nd, 3rd through 5th, middle school, high school, adult curriculum. We've got 15 lessons in Spanish for our listeners that may speak, Spanish. We can deliver on that as well. But you have to tailor to the specific individuals that you're working with. Because I think about this. When I was back in Kentucky market, where I got my start in education, I spoke at prison. And I remember I'm like, prison, this is a different audience, right? But I will tell you, it was 150 women every week, substance abuse crimes, work with them. First couple weeks were about building trust. But, I taught differently to individuals that didn't maybe have the background in finances, that like when I'm teaching engineers and lawyers. So it's not about how much money people make, is it? It's about, the education of helping them get to that next level. So I find it very imperative that I tailor to my specific audience. And I want to ask you your thoughts on that. You teach a variety of people in the
All
Indianapolis
kinds.
market.
I say, I'm always dumbfounded when I find out, well, when I just continue to see that other institutions don't do that. They have a staple program and they're like, if you want financial education, you show up at this location during this time, and we're only going to talk about this. And the community is like, well, that's not necessarily what we need, or that doesn't necessarily, like our audience doesn't, they just can't engage with that. And if you're another bank, keep doing that. Keep doing that so we can continue to thrive. But I'll tell you this, I have been in situations where I build a relationship with a grocery store, and they've got 10 or 20 employees. And I once had an owner say, hey, look, my staff really needs this. There are only 15, 20 people, 10 people, and you offer this for free and you claim to be flexible. Can we just meet at the back of my grocery store?
Yeah.
Like in the back room, and you just teach this? I'm like, yes, I can.
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
100%.
Go into a prison? Yes, we can, right? Or sometimes we have major institutions and they would love a nice, panel discussion of financial education, and they would like an instructor that has more titles on their name than me. And I'm like, that's totally fine. We can get one of our executives, to lead a financial education workshop for you too. But just being flexible and tailoring, I think is personal.
That's the cool part, is that you look at the background of all of our instructors. Like I said, we've got over 200. We've got, commercial bankers, wealth advisors, a lot of tellers or relationship bankers across the board. But we found people that have a passion to do this, right? And we equip them with the materials. They go out and run with it. But we can reach the audience as small as 2 up to, I think the biggest one I did was 1,500,
Wow, yeah.
So but that's the fun part, is, doing this at a variety of age groups. So I know, from our adult side, we've got 69 lessons we can cover. The cool part is we can teach kids the same thing, can't we, Moose? It's just taught in a completely different way.
Level. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
Which is neat. So okay, so when you are working with these, we have the in-person, we do an e-learning option. So for folks that don't know, back in 2019, we built a fully digital platform, Real Life Finance e-learning. For those listening, we offer this to our clients' employees. It's a great way to build a value-add service to them. You offer both in the markets you were. How are they received from the e-learning side of it as well?
I would say first off, the e-learning is really robust. The in-person is great because you can kind of do anything. I mean, you just sit down and let's discuss an idea and we'll make it happen. The e-learning is being really received well from the universities. Yeah. Just large institutions that have like a staff that could kind of ask for the grades, from Ben on a quarterly basis, monthly basis. And I would say like our day-to-day community centers, they love that in-person approach. Yeah. They love that, for an audience of 40 people that meet once a month, they love that in-person approach. We've got schools with the e-learning platform. I would say just major institutions, they love it. They eat it up. And they love the fact that if you have a certain topic that an audience is struggling with via grade, you can just go on Old National Bank /financial education and book an instructor and write down the certain topic that your audience is struggling on, and we'll just come in and
100%. Once again, under oldnational.com, under About Us, community, there's an education site there. And what we've been trying to do is reach people where they're at, right? So we do the in-person, we do the e-learning. We're on the podcast now. We do Instagram videos. So if you don't follow us on Instagram or TikTok, we're on there now, and we've got to meet people where they're at.
Come a far long way. This is pretty cool.
Absolutely. So we'd love for you to follow that, and quick 30-second videos and whatnot. But it's fun work that you do in Indianapolis, and you can tell I've been there when you're there. Very well received, and personally, I just want to say appreciate you and all that you do there.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate your work.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So let me kind of close up the workshop side of it. You get requests from all around. You mentioned universities, right? I mean, we got some universities, like, I'm not going to mention names, but we've got Big Ten universities having all their student athletes go through it. We've got a university in your market that has, I think, pretty much all freshmen go through these programs. And I love it that universities are picking up, seeing the value add of having their students understand finances, understand personal finance. They're most likely going to have student debt. We're helping them, how to pay that off.
Think through that.
Yeah, get everything, buying that first home, the down payment assistance before they buy their first house. A lot of people don't know that, right? There's free money out there if you want to buy a home. How important do you think it is that universities are picking up on this important factor? Being a young individual yourself and just gone through the schooling side, how important it is for our younger audiences at that age group to go through and understand more about personal finance?
I think it's highly important. I mean, if you think about it, when you're a high schooler or a freshman in college, you have a blank slate.
Mm-hmm.
So you really don't know anything. So when I signed off on my first student loan, I mean, I think the idea of signing an official paper was cool. Like, I didn't really care to think about the content inside
Was it scary?
It's just, I'm signing, here we go. I'm going to practice my signature again, you know? And I think that if I could have been approached with financial education by an actual person and be taught what a loan is and what a budget is at that age, I think I would have done a lot of things differently. So I think the fact that universities are picking up on this for their freshman students is highly important.
Yeah, because it's,
I think it's a big win.
I 100%. I wish I would have learned about it when I was in college, because I learned the hard way, right? Now, what I do want to mention for our listeners is for parents, right? Share these experiences with your kids. I mean, I've got 4, they're 13, 9, 7, and 3. And I talk about money with them. And they're always like, Dad, what do you make? And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you that. But it's one of those things that we will share these experiences because parents, you are your kids' role models.
You are.
And they will look up to you.
And they're watching you.
Yeah. And if we make bad decisions, guess what? The kids think it's okay because mom and dad do that. So I can't stress enough to our parents listening how important it is to not only be the role model for your kids, but role model in the financial side as well. And if you've made mistakes, share them.
Be vulnerable with your kids.
100%. I tell my kids some of the dumb mistakes I made. Yeah. And it's like, this is what I don't want you to do. So like my oldest daughter, we're going to add her as an authorized user on a credit card soon so that when she gets through high school, that credit score will be built up. So when she does need to take on debt, right, it's going to be a lot cheaper for her. So, we can share these experiences, these classes in your market. So if you're interested in having somebody like Musa come out and speak, or, we said we've got over 200 folks, we want to get engaged with your community. So hit us up and we'll be there to do that. But Musa, before we close today, I do want to say thank you for being here today. But I like to do a little lightning round question. So we're going to rapid fire these. And
quick answers, right?
Yeah, we got four questions for
Okay.
you. I mean, if you want to dive in a little bit, that's fine. So, number 1, Musa, what's the most valuable lesson you've learned in your career of life so far?
Oh, man, that's such a deep question. I'll tell you this.
Because you're early in your career, too.
The best investment you can make is in the people around you.
Love it.
That's what I think. That's what I that came from the heart.
Surround yourself with good people, right?
Yes, surround yourself with good people. But remember too that you can help people become good people, and like that it'll come back to you in the future. I think the best investment you can make, sure, like work towards your career and all that stuff. But I'll tell you this: I once had an instructor that I was training to do a segment on live TV, and they didn't want to be on live TV, and I said, you so can do it. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. And she's like, I'm not going to do it. So a day before the TV schedule, she's like, I'm not going to do it. And I felt so confident. I picked up the phone. I said, you know what? It's going to be recorded. She's like, okay, cool. And she's like, can you come pick me up so you can ease my nerves while we drive to the TV station? We're driving to the TV station. We sit down. She's in her chair. She had her script. She didn't really need a script.
Yeah.
She was so good. We're sitting down at the table. Well, she's sitting down at the table. I'm backstage. And the camera goes 3, 2, 1, live. It was live. I lied to her.
Yeah.
I said, I believe in you so much. You can do this. And it went live. And it was the best segment one of our instructors did. A year or 2 years later, she's at a different organization. She gives me phone calls like, hey, by the way, that was one of the most important things anyone ever done for me. And I think the best investment you can make is in people.
Love it. Love it. Musa, number 2, if you could instantly master any skill, what would it be and why?
Any skill. I would say if I can instantly master any skill is if I can teleport.
Yeah?
If I can just teleport places.
Where would you go?
I anywhere. Like if I could get work done right here and
Yeah.
then teleport to
That'd be
Indianapolis,
nice.
get work done there, and then go to Chicago and get work. That'd be
Yeah.
pretty nice if I could master it. But there's no way of mastering that because you can't do it.
Well, maybe
But-
Elon Musk has something in the works. You never know.
Elon,
I'm just
please
kidding.
help us out.
That's right. All right, question number 3, Musa. What is your go-to activity? Now, I think I know this one. What is your go-to activity or hobby when you need to relax or unwind?
I've got a handful, but I would say cooking.
I know you love to cook.
I
and
love to cook.
You love to cook meat too, right?
Yes.
What's your
yes.
favorite? I'm just going to add to that question.
I would really just smoking anything.
Yeah.
These days I don't get to smoke a whole lot of meats, but I would say being in the house, slow roasting something nice, making a good starch, or building
Yeah.
a really nice sauce. I get a lot of relaxation from that, or just going on a nice run.
Are you a brisket guy?
Absolutely.
Me too, man. We'll
Absolutely.
have to
You've
make
got all the gear at your house,
Well,
man. You've got
I just need to bring you over and we'll do this again.
You've got a
so.
whole smoke shop at your house.
I love it. Love it. Okay. Question number 4. Who has been the most influential person in your life, Musa, and why?
I've had so many people, so many influential people in my life. I really think that credit goes to God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that credit goes to Jesus. And I think under that, there is a whole armament of all kinds of people. You're one of the most influential people in my career. And I'm not just saying that. Because remember, like being an
We
intern.
started together.
Yeah, we started being an intern. I had all these questions. I was like, I don't want to ask anyone else this. Let me bring it to bed. And, I could be vulnerable. That's influence, right?
Appreciate
And then,
that.
you kind of see where I came from as an intern to here. And that's incredible. But there's a whole lot. But I would really say that credit goes to Jesus.
I love it, man. I'm a faithful man myself, and I appreciate that. And Musa, I'm so glad you could come on today's podcast.
I'm really glad to be
and,
here.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll probably have you back on again too. But once again, for folks in the Indianapolis market, hit up Musa. He knows what he's talking about. He's got a team, an army of instructors. But for folks outside of that area, we've got people everywhere, right? We'll get them, we'll get them taken care of.
All over our multi-state footprint.
100%. Well, appreciate you.
Appreciate you and appreciate the opportunity to be on the Real Life Finance podcast.
Yeah,
This is
absolutely.
live. Yeah.
Well, there's nobody that I could think of that I wanted to have on here as I've gotten to meet you when you first moved over. So really glad you could be here.
Thank you.
And we'll have you back for more, okay?
Awesome. Pleasure to be here.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
Thanks.